What do you think? So this has got to be pretty mixed emotions for my viewers.
You've turned into a truck channel.
Man, I have. Rust and trucks.
This one's
I've
not
changed
rusty.
in my...
This one is not rusty.
No, but we're doing more rust than we
I know.
I thought about it this morning and I thought, boy, we haven't bought paint in so long and our parts store stopped handling paint.
Yeah.
If we had to buy Marina Blue, for example, I don't know where I'd get it. We don't have a paint connection anymore. That's been months. But anyway, so everything now is rust. And my new project, you guys see it, that's coming up soon. That's probably the next video. I'm just holding back, waiting on something. And then I'm gonna break out my favorite new project that you'll never imagine.
I promise you will not guess it. And you will not guess the name.
But you don't know how cool it's gonna be too at the same time.
You won't even understand how cool it's gonna be when you first see it.
Yeah, that just looks like dump.
It does.
So this, on the other hand, this is British. I'm not into British cars or British measuring systems
No, but this is
or
so,
British food.
No.
So we got a British car in here.
But if you met David or David's brother, it would make sense.
Yeah, they could be British. They look British. They do.
They're Jewish.
Well, they got that different look than Arkansas.
We're not actually making fun
Nothing
of you
wrong
guys.
with that. I mean,
But
I'm just saying they look like this car.
Whenever I talk to, whenever we talk about colors, one of David's colors that he'd always be like, what about British racing green?
Yeah, see?
He likes that. And if you see they both are very attention to detail. Like this, David has really good taste, but he has some of the weirdest cars. Like, he can put a car together, like, pick parts, pick pieces, colors, but he picks the weirdest stuff to do it with.
What was his little car that he had?
Zuzu.
No, he had a Chevrolet, like a GM product, like a Cadillac.
Oh yeah, Cadillac.
They had wide body kit or something crazy thing on, which I would never like. And I saw this car at Bakersfield when we were there for Hot Rod Garage Show, and it's like, that's kind of nice. I like that. Who owns that thing? Well, it turns out it's David.
But then he might drive a smart car, and then he also has a 59 Corvette or whatever, and then he's got like the little round of Zuzus. I have a picture, you can insert it, where we put them on my feet because they look like skates. So we photoshopped 2 of them on my feet like skates. So long story short, really good at making things work together and look good and researching stuff. So that, I feel like this car is very fitting for him and his brother.
I don't know if it's going to fit an LS3 though.
That is the question I don't have an answer to.
This is a little bitty hood, and I'm assuming that's a supercharged motor, is it not?
I don't know.
We're about to find out. We're going to unbox it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so evidently this is a big deal, this Defender thing. It's a different world than we live in, but you know, it's cool. It's definitely a cool little car, but I can't imagine 500 horsepower in that.
No, something to think about too is, like, you may be wondering what year. Somebody asked me that the other day, and I asked David, and he said it's a 2002 or 3. I was thinking, like, I totally thought it was years and years and years older than that, because it looks older than that.
It looks like a 1959.
It looks like an old Land Cruiser to me, like that
except
kind
small.
Yeah. Flat glass, but he said something about it was going to be they're going to cruise it around the beach. David's moving now, so I don't know who's maybe it'll just be Josh cruising it. I don't know, but anyways.
Whatever. I know that I've got a bunch of boxes back there. Evidently, this is a common swap, and it's a kit, and I've got instructions, and I've got to read instructions. So this thing gets a 6L80 transmission.
Correct.
So it's a 6-speed, like a 4L80, I guess. So you get this big old automatic transmission, but it's still going to be 4-wheel drive. So there's a kit over there to somehow adapt the transfer case to this giant Chevrolet transmission with this giant 500 horsepower motor in this 1,200 pound car.
I was gonna say, power to weight here.
Man. When I raised the hood, I expected to see a flathead. And it looks like it's got a Hyundai motor in there, but that's actually it says Land Rover right there. Double overhead cam, 16 valve, some kind of Japanese looking motor, and there's got to be a LS. I guess once you get this stuff out of there, it'll be enough room.
I need to look up how much power this actually has.
like 38 brake horsepower. If it's British, it's got to be brake horsepower. So anyway, I did not expect to see that kind of a double overhead cam engine in there.
No.
But now let's unbox the big motor. Let's Americanize this thing. There we go. That's pretty nice looking. So that looks a lot better than that sewing machine motor.
Yeah.
That looks good. No exhaust manifolds. I hope he has headers. Brand new Gearstar 6L80. That's pretty nice. Look, they even painted it special for him.
Yeah, that's all hand painted. They have somebody come in, Gearstar has somebody come in, hand paint their transmissions.
That's pretty cool. Converters in there, cooler, the lines, the fluid, everything's in there. So that's pretty neat. Thanks, Gearstar. So basically, I have not seen any real instructions. My thought is to lift the whole front cap off of this, but I start looking at the way it's put together and it doesn't look easy. I also discovered that this stuff is all plastic. So they have some videos online of how to put the motor mounts in, and I noticed that the fenders were still on and they just had the center chunk taken out of here. So look at these radiator hoses. You got a lower radiator hose, which, let's see, where's that going? This is funny. So you come out of the radiator, I guess with a piece of copper, go into a rubber hose that's molded for a heater hose, I guess. And you come down a little bit further and it's molded for another heater hose. And then it goes into a piece of probably steel tubing or aluminum or copper, I don't know. Comes across here into another piece of rubber hose that goes back here somewhere. Let's see, where does it go? Oh my goodness. It goes back here and it's got another piece of heater hose or something molded into it. It goes up to this manifold. It goes across and around that way. And it goes into this water housing here on the motor on this side, but somehow it snakes around there. I don't know where it goes over there. Let's see if we can see. So it comes around. It comes through all of that. Oh, it's got a rubber hose connecting in there. It goes down and connects to somewhere else. It goes back into the heater up here. So it goes around and down and back up and over to here. And it's got at least 3 hoses, these 2 and one back here that's attached to the lower radiator hose. This is why I don't work on foreign cars. Instead of making this come out the front, it comes out the back and goes around and back up here. Very complicated. So I got the transfer case drained, the transmission drained, and now it's time to drain the oil. Awesome, that's easy. Well, wait, let's see. Oil's gonna go like this, right? I don't think it'll go out and around. Pretty sure it'll go right here. So I guess I'll have to put a funnel to drain over here into my oil drain. Let's see, if they had put the drain plug here, nothing. If they put it over here, nothing. If they put it here, nothing. But if you put it here, something. I guess I don't understand some people or some companies. But anyway, let's rig something up to drain the oil. I think I've got everything loose. I got the power steering lines loose and turned up. That one was rotted and dry rotted and it broke real easy. So that's the return hose, not a big deal. Okay, so something's coming apart. Oh, it did come apart. Ta-da! Okay, so here's my engine compartment, looks like. I gotta get that big chunk of hunk out of there. That's gonna be a learning experience. It may all fit back there in the corner. I may just shove it in there. Now maybe what has to happen, I don't know. The motor part from here on is pretty easy. The mounts, everything I think is pretty much a bolt in. I gotta kind of do some welding and grinding on the motor mounts. They look like they were made in Pakistan in the dirt. But other than that, I think it pretty much bolts in. I think the transfer case has to, I'm hoping it stays in there. Transmission obviously has to come out. I don't know exactly how to get the transfer case loose because the bolts go all directions. But I think the transfer case just lowers down. There's a cross member, and I think it'll lower down in order to make the LS stuff line up. So I'm going to see if I can raise this back up, clean up the last of this antifreeze, roll that chunk out back somewhere, and see if I can figure out how to get the transmission out. That's next. That was the best thing that ever happened to that. So I might try to sell it. You can see it's clean, but I have no idea what it's like. It seemed to have a little miss maybe, but I don't think it was anything. It may not even have been missing. But I'm gonna either sell it on eBay or it's going to the scrapper with the rest of this. But the main thing is it's not in my way now. Starting to make a little bit of sense. So the adapter is going to go right there. I got to put the bolts back in, but it actually fits pretty good. It's got a dowel pin here and a dowel pin here, and they seem to line up well. Now I assume my next step is going to be this shaft. Let's see if I can unmask it or if I just cut it. I'm going to cut it because I feel splines. So I think I can cut right through there. Ugh, they got it greased up. All right, so without instructions, I assume this shaft goes in here and that seal rides on there, and it does. So that's going to stick through there. Then these dowel pins have to line up. Bop it on. Evidently, don't have to have gaskets because they didn't supply any. I'm going to throw a couple bolts in it. If I can figure out which ones go in there. That doesn't. That does, but this bolt evidently going to have to shorten. I need to look because there's some new bolts over there. I don't think any of those are for this though. Let me see. Flat plate to side of engine. Wow. Let me put some instructions. Bent mount to side of gasket adapter. Both sides of, what's that say? Casted, both sides of casted adapter. Casted, is that a word? I saw that and I thought, what does that mean? Crossbar mount to frame. Okay, so I think that's all the bolts that they give. So I guess I'm supposed to reuse those bolts now. Let's just figure out, I'll probably have to shorten one up. I don't know which one of these goes to this casted adapter. I think it had a really goofy, man, I don't want to put those kind of dumb bolts back in.
Was that bag not the casted adapter?
To the side of the casted adapter.
Oh.
Casted adapter. That's funny. Okay, so there's a place there for a bolt and there, but those bolts are way too long. So I'm gonna have to get, I think I've got some of these shorter, but they don't have 10 millimeter heads. Okay, so I found one used bolt with a 13 head and it's shorter. So that'll go in here because that taps into there. And this one I'll probably have to cut off. And then here's what I love about the metric system. I know you guys are tired of hearing it. So 10 millimeter, 10 millimeter, 13 millimeter, 15 millimeter. Makes no sense to me. I guess you can for a minute. Oh, I was wrong. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. It wasn't a 10 to a 15 millimeter, 10 to 17. So for basically a 3/8 bolt, because I just used 3/8 washers on it, I got an 11/16 head. Now I've got a 1/2 inch head, 13. That one doesn't fit. I've got to cut that off. That fit. That one fit. So I need to cut this bolt off at least a 1/2 inch, maybe more. No. 3/8 of an inch. So I'm gonna go cut that off and we'll come back. Okay, so there's a bunch of different bolts to do the same thing, but for the most part that actually fits. And we got the turbo 400 spline, but 6L85 in this thing's case. So now I think I'm pretty close to doing a transmission. So next up, the bitchin' Gearstar 6L85. So I have their adapter on the transfer case. We have that big, nice 6L80 transmission. I've never messed with one of these. This is the first time I've ever even seen one of them. I'm not even sure what they come out of. I don't know if that's a Camaro transmission or a truck, but it's a big piece. I thought 4L80s were big. This thing's just a truck transmission, looks to me like. And the cooler lines come out on the opposite side. That's kind of odd. I've never seen that before. They're usually over here. Shifter's simple. Sometimes they have shafts that stick out and all kinds of goofiness. But that one's nice and simple. This side over here, all it gets is a dipstick. Looks like. I guess that's what that is. I'm not sure what that is. That's the scary part. The electronics. Let's pick this thing up and see if I can stab it on here. It's not going to be twisted, right? Well, it's not too far off, actually. Man, I hope that. How is that going to clear this big mount over here? That don't work. All right, so this mount is going to hit this chunk. Yeah, that don't work. This thing always scares me. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. All right, so something to think about here. If I cut this ear off, which it looks like it has to be, this thing's going to slide so far forward that I can see it getting in the way of that electric plug, because that thing's huge. Man, it would just be so nice if they gave me directions. So that's going to slide forward 1.5 inches. That's going to put this up here. How do I put that electric plug in? And once I cut this adapter, there's no going back. I need to find something out. All right, so I'll come back after I know something else, because right now, I don't know. The fact that there's 0 instructions with this thing, it's just a box of brackets and some parts, and you got to figure it out. There are a few videos, if you do just right. If you go to their website, there's 4 videos, and it's stuff for sale and, I don't know, stuff that has nothing to do with this. But somehow I got a link that goes to somebody's website that shows they have a few videos, maybe 6, of installing this thing. And I can't find anything about what I got to do here. This ear is in the way. When I cut this off this transmission, this adapter is now ruined as far as adapters go, but it's got to go away, I've determined, in order for this to clear. This chunk's going to go right up beside there. So I watched his videos carefully, and he positions his camera just right where you really don't see this side of the adapter from underneath. But I just kept screenshotting, and I found a couple where you could just kind of see that this ear isn't there. So I don't know why they want to keep that a secret, but evidently I've got to cut this ear off of this adapter. So that's what I'm getting ready to do, and then put this transfer case up here. I think the other side can stay, but I'm just going to haphazardly whack this off. Okay, dissected. I'm going to take a grinder and clean that up just a little bit, get rid of this dust, and try this thing back on there. I love my silly little Milwaukee vacuum cleaner. I hate the hose. Alrighty then, let's see if this thing fits on here now. That's no big deal, and it's to be expected, but it would just be so nice if they would just give an instruction to tell you. Just mark on there, must be cut off. Look how close that is. Okay, let's get some bolts. They're new included bolts here to go into the casted adapter. Now that wire, I'm concerned with that. How are you, or better yet, how am I going to put that wire on there? Those are big plugs. Okay, now I need 17. I think those are 17. Yeah, 17 millisqueeters. Okay, so it uses 6. They don't include washers, but I'm doing washers. I can't stand to have bolts digging into aluminum. So I'm going to put 3/8 washers, not 10 millimeter, on each of these bolts. Little thin, nice washers. See how the next piece goes. I don't like it. What's new? So they surely included some new bolts. I haven't found them yet. But see the interference here? That's hitting the case. So I'm going to take it off and take that to the belt sander and sand that down a little bit. I could tighten it down and it would just rub it. It looks like it's not gonna, it doesn't kill it, but I don't like stuff rubbing. That doesn't hurt a thing, but it gives me just a little bit of clearance under there. Let's see if there's new bolt kit for that. So I'm expecting some trouble here. The shift linkage, I have a picture on my phone. The way this linkage comes down from the shifter and the way this is sitting, it hits this big transmission. So I don't know what I got to do. I don't know what they want me to do. They don't tell me. The other thing, I got to put this joint in here. Well, this is 8 millimeter, I think, but look at the threads. I think they tapped that 5/16. The thing that really bugs me, I'm worried about that, but they didn't. This is tapered. They didn't make a flat spot for that jam nut to go up. So when the jam nut's on there, it's only going to be jamming the top of it. So I'm going to take my belt sander, since I've got this mounted up here. That's terrible. That's not a, I'm pretty sure that's a 5/16. Now I don't know what I'm going to do about this shifter. I got to figure out where I want to cut and bend, which again, no problem. I don't mind, but why don't they tell me? Yeah, that's going to sit up there. This thing's a pain. This is going to sit up there. This is going to go into this. This goes into there. Okay, something ain't working. I think I got to bend that rod because it's got this twisted. I think that rod's got to straighten out in order to work at all. And then this, okay, so I'm gonna take that out because that doesn't work. I'm gonna see about putting this in. But this is hitting the transmission. That's not ever gonna go. I don't know what to do. Let's unscrew this a long ways. Screw that jam nut in. See, that hits. That's not, and it's got to go back. Let's see, back here. I can just grind that out, but it's not going to be very strong. So I may have to cut it and angle it and then angle it back in. I don't know. This may require, and here's the other problem. This is a big problem. These, look up here. This is the hole, this is the hole. When this is up here, like that, the holes are 5/8, 3/4 of an inch wrong. And that's the way it is in my picture on the factory one. Yeah, that's not anywhere near. You can see in the picture here, this heim joint is basically underneath that bolt. If you look in this, come over here. This heim joint, or this end, is an inch back from this bolt. This thing should be up here, not back here. So that throws everything off. You can see right there, that's nowhere near where it should be. So I feel like there should have been a new shifter linkage included in this, and there's not. So there's another 2 hours. It's going to take 2 hours to straighten that up. All right, I give up. Not really, but what I give up on is to get this assembled tonight to go in the cruiser over here. I'm going to take the floorboard. There's a big section of floor that will remove. So I'm going to go ahead and get this thing installed along with the motor as much as I can tonight. But I don't know. The shifter is a mystery. I don't know where to put it. It's a big electric shifter. So evidently the selector over here is not the only thing. Part of it shifts through this 500 connector, wire connector here. So instead of trying to put that on here, I'm going to put it on inside the truck. And then this linkage that I've been complaining about, I finally found a picture on the internet that somebody else did. And theirs has a nice new linkage rod and a new joint here, which maybe it'll have the proper threads because this one doesn't. And I think that our friends have failed to give us this stuff and no instructions, so you don't know what you're getting. We have a sheet that comes, that they check the parts off, and there's 4 or 5 parts that were never checked off, so they never sent them, and we've had the stuff now for a few months. So evidently they just didn't send it to us, and I'm here wasting time trying to make this work. I may have to take the transfer case back off of it once I put it in. The way I see it, I'll probably have to take the transfer case off, put this plug in, because I think the harness is going to be 3/4 of an inch, and probably have to bend it around this stuff and then put the transfer case back on. But I don't know. I don't have it. So for the time being, I'm going to try to put the motor and transmission in. What I've got to do now is cut these stock mounts off. I'm going to torch them off. I'm going to grind the frame up, and you got to be 17 inches from, as I take it, from here. Get it?
He's being sarcastic.
You go 17 inches from this point to there, to the front of the mount. Yeah, I'm the same way. 17 inches from where? Well, if you watch close enough, he finally puts his finger on this edge. I think it's 17 inches from the backside of this cross member to the front side of the motor mount, and about an inch above the frame, and then about 3 to 5 degrees tilt back. So I'm gonna clean this old motor mount off, grind the paint off, put these really nice motor mounts. These are some nice stuff here. Well, they're stuff. This one's welded on top. This one's welded on the side. Oh, it's not even welded. Sorry. It's welded inside, but it's stacked on top. Anyway, these go in 17 inches back from the front of this to here, and about an inch above at the front, and about 3 to 5 degrees tilt back. So I'll probably go ahead and grind this, or should I leave this point sticking up? Maybe I'll grind it and actually weld the top of it. And then on this one, I'll probably weld the side of this side. And I'll probably grind a little bit on the inside and get rid of some of that splatter and clean it up a little bit. But those weld about an inch above the frame. So I hope that when I weld those in there and I put the motor in, that I've got to have that 17 inches from here right, because the cross member that bolts in actually bolts in factory holes. So if this is not right, that back there is not going to be right. I'm hoping that's right, and the drive shafts won't be right. But it's 17 inches from here. So I should be able to get it pretty close, and I'm getting ready to torch these old ones out and clean that up and grind the paint on the frame. Then I'll go back and finish these motor mounts. I'll weld them and grind them smooth. So what I'm going to do now is go take the ugly motor mounts that came with the kit. Motor mount brackets. It's not actually motor mounts. Let's let this down. Actually, it can stay there for now. We're going to take these over to the table. I'm going to go bead blast them and get rid of the scale. Tech tip. If you're making stuff like this to sell especially, don't buy carbon black steel. You can buy pickled in oil, P&O steel. And P&O steel has no mill scale on it. Let me find a piece of P&O. Here's a piece for example, this is just black carbon steel like that. It has that black carbon scale on it, and it's really hard to work with. This is the same thickness. This is 3/16 P&O. There's no black scale on it. It's easier to cut, draw on, clean, just everything all the way around. You see the difference in the two. This is the worst stuff you can use. It's very, very beginner. So what I'm going to do is grind this, bead blast it, weld it on the outside, try to knock some of the MIG splatter off of the inside, try to make these look a little bit better before I tack them into the frame. So we'll do that now. This one, they welded the plates on the inside. You can see the difference. One's on the outside, one's on the inside. So one of them is a 1/4 inch wider, or 3/8 of an inch wider, actually, because it's 3/16. You can see the difference. I just don't know. I don't know why people would do that. But anyway, that's some really tacky work in my opinion. But we're going to clean them up and make them look better. There's one tack. Two tacks. Make sure nothing moves because it's kind of established now. 17. And 3/16. And the inch I know is right. So now he wants me to do an angle finder. With 3 to 5 degrees of tilt. So that's 4.2. That's pretty, somewhere in between 3 and 5, right? That's 4. So that's pretty close. Hold to the rubber biscuit. Some of you might remember that rubber biscuit. I used to be able to do that pretty good. Bow, bow, wow. Hey, what a hey, what a ho. Hi, what a hey, what a hey. Okay, so if you remember what I'm talking about, let me know in the comments. Bow, wow, bow. But anyway, that's going on. Then we should be able to hang this thing over into the mount.
Hey kid, don't ever let them get inside your head. They'll tell you what to do in life instead of everything you know that you could get. Don't let them guide your
life.
There's
honestly nothing under there. That motor could break loose and fall through. I just tacked those mounts on. Not that I'm too worried about that, but safety first, right? Everything I do is about safety first. And if you believe that, I got some beachfront property in Arizona that I need to sell you. I'm not very safe, but I don't get hurt very often either. This is going to be pretty cool rig, but honestly, I think it should have had a 4L80. That giant 6L80 is just kind of overblown. I'm slowly removing exhaust manifold bolts that's holding my chains. I'm gonna put them back in the tub of unknown bolts and parts for this. Of course it did. Okay, so there's a LS3 hopefully in its place. You know, I've decided that I can actually get in here and weld those mounts from underneath completely without taking this thing back out if everything fits like it should. So I can weld them and put a little paint on. So here's the view. I thought we'd give you a shot of it before we actually filled this cavern up with transmission transfer case, and well, that's it. It's kind of odd the motor's set off to this side by a lot, but that's the way it is. That's the way the tunnel in the car is. Okay, so that chunk is put up there. The part that I'm seeing that I don't like, I mean, the transmission fits pretty nice. I don't know if you can see that shifter location. It's right underneath this cross brace on the floorboard here. It's supposed to come out in the stock location. That's about 5 inches, I would say, rearward of the stock location. All right, the transmission's bolted to the engine. The engine's bolted to the mounts that are tack welded in. So I come back, I put transmission in, all this stuff in. That shifter is 5 or 6 inches wrong. I'm gonna have to cut the floor up, and I don't think it's supposed to be that way. This cross member is actually stuck through the frame with the 6 bolts that it's supposed to be, and the passenger side mount fits down in there pretty decent. It's twisted a little bit, goofy. So then you come to the driver's side mount. It's made onto the cross member that's made onto the bolt in these holes, and this is, as you can see, the slot is, the cross member's all the way forward. That side fits, the front fits. This mount here, when I put the rubber biscuit and bolt this plate, bent plate as they call it, I am close to an inch, 3/4 of an inch anyway, 7/8 of an inch off. So this, if I bolt that straight up, you can see where this slot is compared to this slot. So it's 7/8 of an inch. I'm gonna put this slot in the rubber biscuit on top. And then when I do this, you can see right here, you see half of the bolt hole, and the bolt hole's way over here. So this bottom bracket's got to go forward almost an inch in order for that to line up. There's nothing I can do. There's no adjustment that I can make to make that work, especially when this side's actually in. This side's maxed out to the front on that. And that adapter's solid. There's nothing I can do. I'm going to cut this off in the bandsaw, shift these 2 plates 7/8 of an inch, and weld them back together. I know, it's a kit. Kits are supposed to be pre-engineered. You're paying somebody to figure this out, give you the parts, and you put it in, but none of these parts just work. So anyway, I'm going to do this, and we'll weld that up and make it fit. But before I do, I think I'm going to try the drive shafts just to make sure they fit. All right, so this is their factory cross member that they made. I did not modify it. The bolts go through these gigantic holes. It was scooted all the way it could, the direction I needed it to go. This mount only bolts on one way, this rubber biscuit. Now this thing will go up here, bolt to that, and bolt to the transfer case. So we're back on track. I can finish bolting this in. Okay, so what I did was, or what I'm doing is trying to fix the problems that this kit has. So what I've done is made patterns out of poster board to go in here. These motor mounts don't come down to the bottom of the frame. Can you see in there? Yeah. So they stop in the middle of the frame. If you could see how thin this frame is, it's barely over a 1/16 of an inch. I can see through some holes back there. And this mount, I don't understand why when they made them, they didn't bring this angle down to the bottom, this angle down to the top, and then you could weld it across the top and it would be supported on both edges of the frame rather than here in the center of the frame. My concern is that if you're off-roading and this LS is bouncing up and down, you're hitting rough bumps, you got rubber biscuits up here that will flex. This motor is going to do this. It's going to settle. It's going to bounce down. As it's bouncing, it's going to cave this frame in here. This is soft. I mean, it's not probably got reinforcing in it, and even if it does, that's still not enough. This should have been designed where it goes from that top corner of the frame up to the top of this. What's the point of having it stick up an inch above the frame and then don't even send a boxing plate for it? So it should have been up there and you could have welded it across the top, and then it should be all the way down to the bottom of the frame. So I've got cardboard patterns for both sides. All four of these are different. And I'm just going to cut these out of the same stuff except pickled in oil, 3/16. And I'm going to weld them on I don't want my customer to have a motor that starts sagging because the mounts aren't strong enough. Off of the edges of them. I don't like goobers on the edges. So this big lump is back out. This isn't a video before I put it in. This is a video after it was put in. I pulled it back out this morning. Why would I do such a thing? Well, I am not happy, as you know, with this conversion kit at all. And the shifter for the transfer case bothered me all night. None of that stuff works. I don't know why the guy doesn't seem to want to send the parts that work. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to him. I don't want to talk to him. But this shifter is too far back to come out in the hole. The hole is up here, the factory hole. So if I've got to make linkage for this, which I'm going to have to, this shifter is going to get moved forward 3.5 inches. So I can move it forward, which it should have been from the manufacturer. This bracket maybe works on a shorter transmission, maybe on a 4L80 or a 400. This would put the shifter in the right location, but it does not on this 6L85. So I'm going to cut this thing off. I'm going to scoot this pocket forward 3.5 inches. The shifter will come out in the same hole. Then I'm going to replace this janky factory Land Rover thing with a If I have to helicoil that, I will. I'm going to replace it with a 5/16 heim joint, and then I'll make my linkage just angle back. It should be no harder than making the linkage for this because it doesn't fit. And if I'm going to make it, I'm going to move this shifter forward. So I'm kind of excited about it. That's going to solve one more problem. You saw the motor mounts last night. I corrected most of the problem on that, and now I'm going to get this shifter fixed. So let's get this thing cut up, this piece of casted aluminum. So that bracket is now 2 pieces, and it was just like that. I sawed it in half. I want to stretch this out 3.5 inches. So I cut that 3.5 by 4.25 out of that plate. What I'm going to do is bevel one side, both sides, one side of both sides. Take it over to the welding table and weld that back together. Then I'm going to weld this back on top. It's not like the shifter gets a lot of leverage. That distance isn't going to hurt anything. It's got 4 8mm bolts holding it, so that distance is no problem. But now that shifter will come out in the stock location. So let's go grind this thing up and take it to the welding table. Put this little jewel back together. Okay, so let's go to the welding table. Stick this stuff back together. Well, first let's look at this. That'll be there. This will be here. And that'll be there. This ear may have to grind or change to make that fit. It hit before. It may hit just a little bit more now, but that's going to be nice. I think that feels like it's going to work just right. Let's see. Zip these 2 bolts down, or 4 bolts down, and see if it clears the transmission hump and sits fairly level. It really doesn't have to sit perfect. I can see it pulling down a little bit. That ear's hitting, which is no big deal. I grind that off. It was already needing grinding anyway. I see nothing wrong with that. That just corrected their engineering problem. Okay, let's go back and weld that, and then I'll grind that ear just a little bit. Bada bing, bada boom. So that's welded and solid. Now I'm gonna go grind that and put it on. Okay. I went ahead and put a new belt on the sander and just faced the top off just because. And then this is going to sit here. Only half the gasket's there. I'll put a little silicone on that when I put it together for real. Let's bolt that thing back on. They did this from the factory. Let me get this nut, this rogue nut. So all it was is just a hole in that shaft and a slot in here with a very basic little bolt that just tighten up a nylon nut. That's all it was. And then down here it had a really janky little piece of linkage. So what I'm going to do is screw a heim joint in here. I may end up welding, because I think I'm going to run the linkage back. Let's see. That's this one, and this is this one. So this has got to come down. I'm probably going to have to extend this out, because I don't have any floor clearance issues, not really. So if I might weld a boss on here and bring it underneath like this. If I put that right about there, it would clear this linkage. I can come out of here with the linkage arm and right down there. Man, that's just easier than what they had. So I'm going to cut this linkage and add 3 inches, not 3.5. Measured that out. I moved the top plate 3.5, but evidently at that angle it only wants 3 inches on the linkage. That's a little bit bigger rod. It's 5/16. So let's take it over there and weld that up. Okay. So it looks pretty good. Let me zip these 2 bolts down so they don't look deceiving. This is what we've got. The plate's on, the shifter's bolted down with a couple bolts. I extended that rod 3 inches. It bolts right into the factory Range Rover piece. So this shifter works perfectly. I gotta twist both of them. I can't turn it because it's not a manual transmission, but it shifts exactly like it's supposed to. Then I made this aluminum piece that I'm getting ready to weld on here, clearanced it for this shifter to move back and forth here. And this new linkage rod will be even easier than before. I'm going to use the edge of my tape measure and just show you what it's going to look like. I'm going to make a pin that fits in this hole. It's going to bolt to this heim joint and go right up here to this linkage. So when you push out, it's going to push this back. When you go this way, it's going to push it out that way. So this linkage here will just move back and forth. I'm going to set it up, but this is the same spacing that it had from the factory. Here's the linkage rod that was on it. So I don't even know if this has 3 positions in the box. I think it's just lock, which is here. When I do that, I can make this work because I can put the gears in their place. So see, that works really good. As long as I've got this locked in, I can turn it. So it's got 3 positions, but I think it just uses 2 of them. Based on the shift knob, it just looks like it's left and right. Whatever the case is, it'll have the same exact geometry that it had from the factory. So if 3 was what it was using, it'll have 3. But this rod's going to be very simple now to this linkage to make. But I'm just relocating this pivot point back, so which is kind of closer to where, no, it was forward before because the shifter was in a different place. So I'm going to weld this on here, make the shift linkage, and I think this will work great. Then I've got to figure out a way to mount the actual shifter. It's a big billet piece. I may end up welding some more on here to mount that shifter on top of the transmission. There's my new linkage rod that should have been supplied with this kit, but here's how I solved this problem. You know, the 3-inch forward, 3.5-inch forward, there's my new heim joint that I made this 1-inch round piece, angle cut it, drilled it and tapped it for a 5/16 heim joint, welded it on to that. Instead of using their hole, I now use this hole. This has been extended. I took this piece of linkage off the transfer case, put it in my mill, and slotted this hole back, 1/4-inch hole back, and then I die grinded the angle just a little bit. You'll see why here in just a second. So now this works like, let's put this piece together. That goes in there, this goes on here, just like it did from Land Rover. Just gonna stick that on there. This goes right in there. Look at that, just fits right in. Let me tighten that stuff up. And I think it'll clear the floor without any problems. And I watched a movie just now because I've never driven this. I can't understand Land Rover's stuff. Just looking at it, I got to be very skeptical because I don't know what, you know, England's backwards, everything they do. So I assume that when the stick's to the right, it's low, neutral, high, obviously. I'm not confused about that. Then you slide it over and you differential lock and you got low, neutral, high. The only problem I had with that was, and I should have showed that before I put this together, this selector here has 3 detents, not 2. So I didn't know if this stick had one more position that it needed to engage. But with the way it was, I didn't try it before I took it off of the manual transmission. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't, I never thought about it. The leverages are the same here as they were. So there was no way that I could see that I could get 3 positions out of this leverage ratio. Well, I watched a video of a British woman in a Land Rover and she explained it, and it's just like I thought on the knob. It's only got 2 positions, but here we go now. So now, look how nice that works. Left, right, that's locked, and that's exactly what happens here. See the back? When I spin the front one, the back goes the same direction. When it's unlocked, it's an open diff, as the British say, open diff, differential. So when it's locked over this way, it's locked in gear, and then you've got, if I could, let's see, there we go. Let me put it back locked. That's open, that's locked, okay. So now you got low, I can't turn it, high, and neutral, right there. And then you slide it over. Let me get this all figured out. Slide it over this way, and you've got open. Let's see, where's my knob? Low, neutral, high. This is street. So this would be low, that'd be high, and that'd be neutral. So everything works like it should. It'd be a lot easier if I could turn the shaft on it, but I can't reach inside this transmission and turn it to make the gears line up. I'm colliding gears. They're not mashing exactly right, but it does work. So this one works really bitchin'. You're only using 2 of those spots. See, I've actually got enough throw. There's the locked one, or the open one, the locked one, and you can actually almost get the third position, but evidently it doesn't do anything. So she only referred to open and locked. So this is solved. That's now works better probably than it did before, and I've got all this working. Now I got to put a low car shifter up here somehow, but that's done, and that's bitching. That just solved the problems of where the shifter's coming through the floor instead of back here 3 inches where I had to cut the floor out to make it work. It's now coming out of the stock location. Saturday morning, or well, actually Saturday afternoon now, but I was here Saturday morning about 8 o'clock, and I wanted to finish this transmission deal up. So I came in, made this bracket, or plate rather, figured out where it needed to sit. The shifter needs to sit as close to this shifter as possible. There's like 4 inches of difference, space between the boots in the truck. So I don't know still how it's going to fit height wise. I think it'll be okay. It's barely any taller than the 4-speed or the 4-wheel drive shifter. So we'll see here in just a minute. I machined a couple grooves to make it, you can't hardly see them, but to fit over the bumps on the transmission case, welded it heavy here, and it's very strong. It does not move at all. So this thing hopefully is wrapped up. I'm going to pull the 2 knobs off and see if I can put it back in. This just works so good. I love that. The cable worked out good. They kind of want this thing to be mounted inside the truck, but this is up so high off the ground and up inside such a cavity that I feel like it's okay where it's at. It's just got so many switches in it. So I guess what it does is when you want to go lower than drive, that'll go to drive. Well, actually that's drive, pull it one more, and then you go into manual mode and you push the lever over, and then you can bump shift up and down. And then it doesn't allow you, as I can tell anyway, to run through all the gears manually, which I don't understand. I'd rather just do it manually, but it's a sport shifter for this thing. So I'm getting ready to stick it back in the truck, and hopefully this is the last time I'll have it out. That bracket came out pretty good. It's got this. Pretty good. It's got this plate, the cup that the adapter people made that was made onto this, and then I extended it here. It's bolted to the big adapter with 4 5/16 bolts. I've got the shifter all adjusted. There's just a lot of wires, 3 different switches worth of wires. One I'm sure is neutral safety, and then the others bump up and bump down. So that'll have to come after we get a TCU, transmission control unit, because we don't have the right one. So let's put this thing in. Okay, so transmission's stuck back in here. It's bolted up to the engine. The mount is bolted up. I've got to tighten the rubber biscuits up. But if you look up here, now you can see the 3.5 inch plate that I cut the shifter, the factory supplied bracket. I cut it in 2. I'll touch it. Well, you've seen this, but I'm going to show you again just in case. Right there, that plate, I extended the shifter, which is right there, the 4-wheel drive shifter, forward 3.5 inches. When I was putting this up, that little short stick went right smack straight up into the rubber boot hole. So that was perfect. The transmission shifter, I also put it right straight up into that boot hole, and you can see it just fits up nice and tight up there. This side, you can kind of see the manual shifter here, the transmission shifter, and that just works so good. And the cable, you can see it. I don't know if the light helps or hurts, but the cable comes out the back, curves around, and hooks right into the bottom of the transmission there, like every other one does. But that just really fit super good. I didn't have to modify the floor at all. There's the wires I've still got to hook up, so I'll probably have to take the plastic part of the floor, which that tunnel looks to be plastic from what I can tell. I'll probably have to take it out and pull the wires out and do what I need to do. But that thing is fitting back in the factory location like it should, which I don't know why they wouldn't make the kit do that, but and I didn't even look when I was just up there, but they want you to cut the floor out, which is just silly to me. When you just make the bracket a little bit different and it works back in the location it's supposed to. So I fixed all that. The shifter works. It moves back and forth. I'll show you that next. I'll let it down, but I think I'm ready to put the drive shafts back in it and button the bottom up for real this time. Okay, so transmission's back in with the transfer case, and my stick locations were just determined off of measurements. So, that can be kind of janky. You never know what they're actually going to turn out. But it's a little bit dark in here, but I got to show you this. Look at that shifter clearance. It doesn't get any better than that. So that's all the way back. You wouldn't really want one, here's the thing. This shifter, after reading multiple pages of stuff, it goes park, reverse, neutral, drive, and one more location, that's the one it's in now, and then you move it over and you bump it. So that's how you change from drive to, whatever, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So if you had the shifter, and I think the transmission actually has those detents in the valve body. I think you could probably put a shifter in, but you would think of the amount of throw that it would have to have. I don't think now, after putting it in the truck, that would be a good idea, because the shifter would probably be back here when it was in first gear. So that sport or that manual mode that it has, you just bump it. So that shifter I'm super happy with. The boot, that's the factory boot. Look at that, it's absolutely perfect. This is the four-wheel drive shifter. It was always a little bit goofy because it's really short, but it works. And the only thing that it doesn't do is if you're in, let's see, I can't remember, I can't see. I'm going to hold the light down here. Whatever, I think when you go over that way, I believe that's locked. So if I go that way and lock it, and you put this back into manual mode, they kind of get together. But I guess you probably would do that if you were locked differentials. So this may have to change, and it may work. I haven't got that screwed on all the way. They're not ideal, but they're pretty good. That's screwing way down. Let's see. That probably works right there. It may bump it just a skosh. Maybe if I get it screwed all the way on, it won't. I haven't done that yet. Okay, so that's all the way on, I think. It bumps, but I think that's changing the gear, and that's changing it up. That'd be downshifting and upshifting. So it'll probably just squeak. But the main thing is these boots. I think the shifter may be a little lower than it was from the factory. I didn't pay any attention to it, but I didn't design that part. All I did was move it forward, and that other shifter works awesome. Something to note here, if I had used their mount the way they sent it, this shifter would have been here. It would have been 3.5 inches. That would have put it right against this console. That's not a factory piece, I understand, but it's made for it, and they've already got it and didn't want to have to change it. So it would have messed up all of the floor. It would have messed up this nice shifter boot combination here. That would have just ruined everything. And then if I used the low car shifter like they wanted, it would have been on top of the floor. I would have had to made a plate to cover this up and bolted this big chunk of aluminum up here. It's not really something you would want to look at. And the cable would have to come out and go back through this console. The cable comes out of the back of it. It's honestly back here. So it would have just been a mess. The bracket that I made everything work just like the factory. So I'm really pleased with all that. And that way that functions in there is just like factory. Alrighty then, that wraps up this episode, the first episode of this British Land Rover. I keep wanting to say Land Cruiser because I had Land Cruisers, 15 years ago. I built a 454 fuel injected. I think it had a 700 R4, but it had Dana 60 in the front, and it had a 9-inch in the back with a Curry high pinion. It's set up off the ground, had articulating springs. I did all this stuff. I made the doors from scratch. It's a 68, I think. So Land Cruiser sounds more normal to me than Land Rover. Land Rover sounds like somebody drinking wine with their pinky extended. I know, I'm just kidding. That's just me. I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm just not a Land Rover person. I'm a Land Cruiser person. I'm not even that. I didn't enjoy my Land Cruiser, so I sold it. It's sat around here for several years. I finally just got rid of it. But this is going to be pretty cool. This thing here is a little better than the 454 I had. More horsepower, lighter weight, way more reliable. I built the wiring harness on mine, 15, whatever it was. Alex was just a little girl. There's pictures of her. So it's probably more like 20 years ago. I hate to admit that. But stuff was not as easy to get back then. It wasn't as much stuff as there is now. And I just didn't enjoy the thing. Too high off the ground, too top heavy feeling. I think this one's going to be the same. I feel like this one's going to be very top heavy feeling, very narrow wheelbase. But if you're just crawling through the woods or something, this is way better. This will have lots of ground clearance and very narrow. I wouldn't want to go out rock crawling, but that's just me. I know nothing about four-wheel drives. What I'm trying to say, the hard part is done. The motor's in, transmission's in, shifters are in, drive shaft's in. Now it's the annoying part, making it run. And that should be easy. The engine should be easy to get running. I'll have to track down all the wires from Range Rover and try to find the wires that I'm going to hook to the new ECU. So I don't know how easy that'll be. I know there was a prince in England named Lucas. At least that's what I've heard. And he was known as the Prince of Darkness because I think everything that he did didn't work very well. I don't know if this is Lucas Electrics, but I think the British are known for electrics that don't work. We were at a swamp meet one time. And there was a Lucas refrigerator, and somebody standing there asked the guy, says, "What do you do with a Lucas refrigerator?" And the guy says, "You keep warm beer in it." That's a long time ago. Whatever. It's true. But maybe this isn't quite as bad. I don't know. This thing's made in Slovenia, which I just got educated on where that was located. I don't know anything about Slovenia. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. I'm not trying to butcher it on purpose. I think it's not, I don't know. I'm not going to try anymore. But it may be not Lucas, it may be something Slovenian, but it's all put together as far as bolting the engine in and the transmission, transfer case, and shifters. It looks a little bit funny because it's set so far from the firewall, but that's nice because you can get down there, and I still have to put the top 2 transmission bolts in. Looks like the exhaust should be no problem. It's going to have exhaust manifolds, as I understand it. I think they're in a box in the back of this thing. So I've got to do the exhaust on it, get the radiator in. David that owns this keeps telling me that this conversion is known for running hot. They have heating issues. Well, I'm assuming, I don't know why that would be. I don't have heating issues on my stuff, but I guess that they just can't get enough radiator in there. But supposedly the people that made this kit have the radiator issue worked out, and it's supposed to be efficient. So now I've got to figure out all the alternator, air conditioner, power steering, the belts, everything, try to hook it up to that box, and the air conditioner's got to go back together. I don't know what I'm doing for a compressor. I haven't seen that yet. But it's all that annoying little stuff, the converting stuff. But at least that part's good. I'm impressed with that, really, because the floor on this thing is so accommodating to anything. It's got so much room up inside of it. So it was fun. It was a little bit annoying because let me go back around here. I still don't like that motor mount. It's not designed right at all. I've designed lots of motor mounts. This inch above the frame is nonsense. I'll have to put a plate on there and at least box that, because I can't stand that. That just looks unfinished and way wrong design. This side's the same way. So I did add those gussets down on the bottom that tied the thing into the bottom. These motor mounts just weren't made for this frame. Or maybe when they first did it, they set the motor an inch lower, which would have explained why the mounts are made like they are. I don't know. Whatever the case is, they're not right. So I had to kind of work on that. And then that shifter, the transfer case, the fact that I couldn't hook the transfer case linkage back up, that was annoying. I don't know if they just didn't send the parts, but it didn't matter. It worked out for the best because I was able, I woke up yesterday morning, I figured if I've got to make linkage, why would I leave the shifter where it's at when there's plenty of room above or in front? So that worked out way better for David and his brother, because now that shifter's in the stock location. It works perfectly. It has clearance. I didn't have to cut the floor. The linkage works superior. That piece of linkage that I made, where I put the pin down in the linkage instead of having the C-hook that connects it, I just like it so much better. And it's just smooth as butter. So it all worked out in the long run. The drive shaft's bolted right in, all that. They had the fore and aft, and all that worked out in the kit. Once I figured out the 17-inch from here, 17 inches from here to the motor mount. Once I got that established, that's why I just tack welded them in. You remember I spoke about that. Once I got that figured out and that cross member fit into the stock location, I was able to weld it up. So anyway, the next episode I want to hook everything up. I'll have the ancillaries, all those parts that I just discussed, and when we come back, hopefully you can hear this thing run. And hopefully before too long, it goes to the West Coast. And it'll probably be a beach cruiser, maybe a desert cruiser, which that would be a lot of fun to take this thing out in the desert and run on those desert roads and stuff. That would be awesome. Here in Arkansas in the woods, I'd hate to take this thing and they get beat up. The trails are rough, rocky, trees. I mean, it's really rough. California desert, I love that. I would love to go cruising with the top off in the California desert. So maybe David will invite me out and we can do that. Get it, David? All right. Anyway, thanks for watching. That part's done. If you need to do a Land Cruiser LS swap, Hopefully this video helps. We'll see you next time.